Today's webinar is part of our new student orientation series of webinars. And we have Andrew from International Student Services at the Student Success Center at McMaster University here to talk about off-campus housing. So I'll hand over the mic to you, Andrew.
Great, thanks so much, Yufei. And again, welcome everybody. We're excited to meet you once you arrive. I'm sure the next few months, that you're probably scrambling to get things ready to arrive here. But we're very excited to see you once you do arrive in Hamilton. So my name's Andrew Staples, and I am the Student Success Coach. So I work within International Student Services, helping to support international students with any questions or concerns that you might have. And a common question that we have is about sort of that transition. And a big part of that is housing. So that's what brought me here today to meet with you. But I did just want to plug about International Student Services. So we are here to support you with your transition. We've got lots of workshops and programming throughout the year. We also have some social events if you're looking to connect with other international students. We offer one-on-one appointments, and we also have an immigration team. So if you do have any questions about study permits, work permits, co-op permits, anything like that, we do have advisors that can help you sort of navigate those questions. So when we begin, this is something that maybe you've seen in other webinars, or maybe you will see once you arrive in Canada. It's something we like to do, which is called a land acknowledgement. And this is a way of part of Canada's truth and reconciliation around Indigenous communities. So this is something you might encounter at the beginning of a meeting or beginning of a webinar. So McMaster University is located on the traditional territories of the Mississauga and Haudenosaunee Nations. And so when you arrive and are living and studying here, you will be living in Hamilton, but recognizing that it is part of the traditional territories of the Mississauga and Haudenosaunee people. And so traditionally, these lands are protected by what's called the Dish with One Spoon Wampum Agreement. And this wampum agreement is really recognizing that the land and everything on the land is here for everybody. And that, it is our responsibility to share it with everybody else who lives here, as well as to ensure that, we can share it for those who are yet to arrive in the future. So today's topic is all about off-campus housing. And so before we begin, I just wanted to, go over maybe some terms that, I will be talking about, just so, you are familiar with the words that I'm using. So rent, that this is, what you'll be paying usually per month to occupy the place that you will be living in. Utilities. This is a common term in Ontario that would refer to additional costs above rent. So that could be paying for electricity, water, waste disposal, heating, and sewage. So you might see listings that will say, rent is $800 a month plus utilities, or it might say utilities included. So utilities is captured under there. Apartments might be furnished or unfurnished. So furnished would mean there's probably a bed and a desk, maybe a couch or those kind of things already in the apartment. Unfurnished would mean that you would be required to purchase and have a bed and a desk and arrange that for yourself. Everywhere is going to have sort of standard kitchen appliances. So, you don't have to buy a stove or a fridge, that stuff would be included. But other items would depend if it's furnished or unfurnished. A co-ed living space. This would be if you are living with either one, co-ed would mean that you're living with more than one gender in the same accommodation. And then a sublet, this is something that's probably going to be quite common for students arriving in January. And so a sublet is when somebody has signed a lease, maybe for 12 months, and then maybe they are leaving or they no longer want to continue that lease. Maybe they're going on co-op, or maybe they have decided not to be a student anymore, and then they would be subletting their lease. So essentially, you would be taking over the remaining portion of that initial lease that person signed. So you might see some postings that are saying, I'm subletting or subleasing my apartment. And then the last term I wanted to review is what exactly is a lease. So a lease, this is something that it's a legal contract that outlines your responsibilities as the tenant, as well as the responsibilities of the property owner or the landlord. So this is a legal document. Once you have signed it, it's legally binding, and that you would be required to fulfill, your commitment, and then the landlord would be required to fill their commitment. It is required that there is an Ontario standard lease that is required. However, in reality, we do know that some landlords don't use the Ontario standard lease, but do know that the Ontario standard lease is something that should be used. In the lease, it would say how much rent is, or what the cost of living is going to be. It would say if utilities are included or not included. It might outline if there's any deposits. Typically in Canada, the deposit would be, we would say, like first and last month's rent. So you shouldn't be signing something that says like you need to pay like a $10,000 deposit or a $5,000 deposit. That kind of deposit doesn't typically exist in Canada. It's really important to recognize that because it's a legally binding document, you typically cannot terminate your lease early. Obviously, there are going to be some exceptions, but just keep in mind, once you've signed this, that means you are committed to that location. If you sign one and then 2 days later you find a better apartment and sign another, then you are technically responsible for fulfilling both of those leases. And another important thing to recognize is that you do have a right to privacy. So the place that you are renting, it is yours. Typically, a landlord can enter, but they would have to give you at least 24 hours notice to come into the property, with the exception of an emergency, like if a pipe started leaking or something like that they had to come in. So do keep in mind that the place that you are living in is yours, and you have that right to privacy. In addition to a lease, some individuals do choose to purchase insurance. So there is different types of insurance that you could purchase. Some that covers your belongings, and some that would cover, potential, damage to the property or things like that. Okay, so how today's kind of going to go is sort of as you see on the left hand side. We've sort of got these topics: who you want to live with, the different types of housing that's available, where to live, how to search, and then some general safety and well-being suggestions. And then at the end, we are going to be available to do a Q&A. So when you're moving to Canada, I don't know if you've lived away from home before, but just wanted to give you some sort of general suggestions. When you arrive, obviously you're coming as grad students, your focus is going to be on academics, but we really do encourage you to find a community where you belong. I mean, that could be a community within your program, it could be a community of other grad students, other international students, but students that are successful and do thrive while they're here are ones that do find that community, that social circle, and that friendship. So it is really important that you make sure you find some time for that. If you've never lived away from home, I would suggest in the next couple of months, Find out your parents, your grandparents' favorite food that they cook for you and learn how to cook it. So you can have some home comforts once you get here. Moving and adjusting and then trying to learn how to cook, trying to learn how to do laundry, all of that stuff. If you've never done it before, it can be a little bit overwhelming. So, take the next few weeks, months before you arrive, and try to learn some of this stuff. We do really encourage that you have a healthy living style. So again, I get it. You're grad students, your priority is academics, but you do also have to take care of yourself. So, making sure you're eating healthy, exercising, have, a social life. And again, if you ever find that you're maybe not having a lifestyle that you wanted or you anticipated, you can always connect with myself or you, Faye, and we can chat with you about that. And then the other big thing that you want to think about is, who do you want to live with? Do you want to live by yourself and have your own apartment? Or are you comfortable living with people? And if you're going to live with people, you want to start asking yourself things about what your lifestyle is like, what your tolerance level is like. And then if you are moving in with somebody else, you want to have these conversations up front before you live with them. So for example, are you someone that, is awake, early riser, is awake during the day and needs quiet time at night? Or are you somebody who is more of a night person? And so obviously, you want to find someone that's going to have similar waking hours as you to minimize that noise. Cleanliness, some people are really clean things, do the dishes all the time. Some people may be a little bit messy. They'll leave dishes in the sink. They'll maybe wash once per week. And you want to ask yourself, what's your level of tolerance with this? Same with cooking. We have heard from some students that, maybe the scent or the type of food that roommates cook can bother you. If you're a vegetarian or a vegan and living with someone who's eating a lot of meat, maybe that smell or that scent might aggravate you. Noise level, do you want a quiet place? Do you want a place that has guests, does not have guests? And then lastly, what is your tolerance around alcohol and then cigarette smoking or cannabis consumption? So again, it's good to kind of ask yourself this, sort of figure out what your preferences are. And then if you are living with somebody, just have these conversations before you agree to live with each other, just to try to minimize potential conflicts that might occur down the road if you're not compatible. So the types of housing that's available in Canada might be quite different than maybe what you're used to where you were living back home or where you were studying as an undergraduate student. So the most common form of housing for students is what we would call a student house. So McMaster is surrounded by a very residential community. So this picture here was taken a couple blocks actually from campus. So this kind of style of home really surrounds the area. So there are lots of, these would be typically family homes, but a lot of these have been converted to what we would call a student house. So in a student house, you would be renting a private bedroom. And then you would have a shared living space. So it might be a shared kitchen, shared bathrooms, maybe a living room area. Generally, these are going to be less expensive because you are sharing it with other people. They are going to be older properties, but older properties, depending on how well they've been taken care of. I grew up very, very close to McMaster. I think my parents' house is close to 100 years old, but it's very modern and nice inside. So don't worry too much about the age of the house. Typically, these houses might have 4 to 8 students. Occasionally, we do see some that have 10, 12 students. And so again, you want to look at things like, how many bathrooms are there? If it's one bathroom for 8 people, that could be challenging for you. If it's one bathroom for 3 people, that might be more accommodating. Within a student house, people do live in the basement, so that would be more underground, sort of on the first floor or second floor, or on the top floor, which might be referred to as an attic. Basements can be colder in the winter, but they're also cooler in the summer, which could be advantageous. However, because you're in a basement, you might have a smaller window and less access to natural light. And also, living in a basement, you'd have to just be aware of how soundproof is it for people above you. Some houses, people can walk around above you and you don't hear them. Some houses, you hear absolutely everything that happens above you. So just things to kind of keep in mind. If you're living on an upper level or on the main floor, might have a larger window, might not have anybody living above you. And then on the top floor or the attic space, there might usually be just one room on this top floor. However, because these houses are older, sometimes those rooms can get very, very warm in the summer, and sometimes the heating vents and the air circulation might not be as strong up there in the winter, so they might actually feel hotter in the summer and colder in the winter. Another type of house that is available, however, coming in January, it might be quite limited, is that there are a couple of off-campus private sort of student apartments. So these would be apartment buildings that are only occupied by students. And so typically it would be an apartment where you would have your own private room, shared common space. And then I think the advantage of living at a place like this is that they are typically furnished. So you wouldn't have to worry about arranging a bed. I think they often have a TV and a couch and that kind of thing. And again, it is just students that would live there. All of these would have a 12-month lease, which typically include utilities. So the advantage is that it is move-in ready. One of the challenges starting in January is typically the leases for these go from September until August, so follow sort of a more common start date for students starting at McMaster. However, you may be able to find students that are leaving, and there might be a sublease available at a place like this. There's also what I would call more of a traditional kind of apartment. So these apartments could be kind of a high rise like you see in this picture, maybe 15, 20 stories. Some might be just 2 or 3 stories. And these are going to be more of sort of a traditional apartment. You might have families living in here. You might have working professionals living here or students. These are not going to be furnished. So you would have a stove and a fridge, but that would be all. And depending on the size of the apartment, it could be a single, so it's just you living there. It could be a 2-bedroom, it could be a 3-bedroom. And so obviously depending on how many people you live with would depend on how many people you're sharing a bathroom with. These would be coming available sort of throughout the year, so it might not follow that typical cycle of September to August or May to April, which some of the student housing follows. So this could be an option, but then typically you would be signing a 12-month lease. And then lastly, you may find a bedroom where you are living with a landlord. So this would be, sharing it with a family or sharing it with the landlord. Typically, you would have your own private bedroom, might be furnished. And then you would be sharing the living space with that family that you're living with. These are, I'm going to say, not very common, but we did just want to highlight it because you might encounter this. There might be some more flexibility in terms of the lease length. but they're generally going to be more expensive than sort of a typical student house where you're just living with students. So what are the prices on average? Prices, unfortunately, are increasing very, very quickly. Not just Hamilton, but all of Canada is really has a bit of a housing shortage at the moment, which is driving up prices. So a room in a student house, you're looking, very low end. If you're lucky, you might find something that's $450, but I would anticipate something more on the higher end of around $800. Plus, then you would have the monthly, utilities that you would need to pay for. A one-bedroom apartment, the range can really vary. You might be able to find something as low as $1,200 or $1,400 a month, all the way up to maybe $2,000. The private student residences that I talked to you about, that they're a bit more firm in their prices, so between $820 and $1,200. That would be all inclusive of everything. And then a room in a landlord's house, it really depends, but maybe around $700 per month. Also, just keep in mind that you may be asked as part of the lease or part of the agreement that there might be a key deposit. The key deposit is refundable, but the idea would be, you pay this key deposit upfront, and then when you return your key, you would get that deposit back. So in addition to the sort of rent expense, I just did want to kind of briefly give you maybe an estimate of what expenses are. But this workshop is not designed really on your expenses. So there is going to be another workshop put on by our Max Money Center, which is going to be all about budgeting and sort of the expense of living in Canada. So I do encourage you to attend that. But I did want to just kind of briefly highlight, what utilities and things might cost. So groceries, again, depends on, meat is going to be more expensive, so it depends on your diet, but maybe around $400 per month. Utility bills could be around $140, maybe $200 a month. However, if you're splitting it with 8 other people, you wouldn't be responsible for that total cost in a student house, so that will be split. Internet in Canada can be quite expensive, anywhere between $50 to $150 per month. Again, that could be split with your roommates. A phone bill, that would be something that's very individual to you. I think we have the highest cell phone bills in the world, unfortunately. Very, very cheap plans with minimal data. You might be looking at $40 a month. If you're looking to have more unlimited data, or that, it can get very, very expensive. So when you're deciding where to live, obviously, most students prefer to live close to campus. We hear that from everybody. So, we can highlight sort of the most common areas where students want to live. But again, I do want to sort of emphasize that living near campus, especially arriving in January, can be challenging because the largest intake to McMaster does occur in September. So the vast majority of students and student housing around campus may already be occupied by individuals that arrived in September. However, as I mentioned, students have co-ops, students maybe leave for whatever reason. So you still might be able to find something close to campus with more of that, what I mentioned, doing like a sublet or a sublease. So the most common neighborhoods close to campus would be neighborhoods called Westdale and Ainsleywood. It's not really clear in the picture, but that blue dot kind of in the center here. Let me try to move my cursor over here. That's where McMaster is. So anywhere in Westdale or Ainsleywood is probably within walking distance, or a very, very short bus ride. So within here, there is one of those sort of private student apartment type rentals. There are a few traditional apartments, but the vast majority of the places here are going to be a student house. We do have a lot of students that live downtown Hamilton. It would be too far to walk, but all of the buses from downtown Hamilton do go directly to campus. McMaster's kind of on the main Hamilton bus line. So that could be an option. One nice thing about living downtown is that you might be close to different restaurants, different shops, nightlife, that kind of thing, depending on what your interests are. And then we do have quite a few students that live in an area which is called Dundas. So Dundas is to the west of campus. Again, it would be too far to walk, but it is accessible by bus. And this is quite a quiet sort of family residential area. So as I mentioned, there are lots and lots of houses very close to campus, like some are 5-minute walks, some are 15-20-minute walk, but vacancies are going to be quite limited. So I don't want you to limit yourself to trying to find that perfect house for January that's a close proximity to campus, because I don't want you to lose out on potentially other options that could be available to you. So we do have a lot of students that do live a little bit further from campus. And so if in your search you are finding things that aren't close to campus in January, what you'd want to make sure is it close to a bus stop? And then how long would it take to by bus to get to campus? And so you can use Google Maps. You could put in the address of the house that you find, the destination of McMaster, and just click the transit option, and it would tell you approximately how long it would take to get there. The other things that you'd want to consider is how close is it to some of the common amenities that you would use. So is it walking distance to a grocery store, or are you going to have to take an additional bus? Pharmacies, restaurants, those kind of sort of convenience type places that you would want to live with. And so Google Maps is a great tool. That's basically what everybody uses here. So you can use Google Maps to, if you find a house, to kind of get a better sense of that neighborhood and what's around you. So in terms of beginning your search, we wanted to kind of highlight the different techniques and methods that you can use. And I would encourage you to use all of these. Because again, I'm not trying to scare you in terms of finding housing, but I'm just trying to be realistic that it is very, very competitive right now to find housing. So I would suggest start looking today or tomorrow, like really soon. Again, just to have an idea of what's available. As I had mentioned, is very typical for leases for students to be from September to August or May to April. It's not common to find like a January to December lease on a student house. And so that's why looking for something like a sublet when you arrive might be a good temporary measure. So, finding maybe something from January until April, and then you can look for maybe a longer term solution starting in May or September, for the duration of your studies. So some students are trying to find the perfect place when you move in right away. And if you can find that, that's awesome. But if you can't, finding a sublet so you have a place to live temporarily until you kind of figure out where in Hamilton you want to live, understand the city a little bit more, and then you could look for something more long term. So McMaster has an off-campus housing sort of post board. The nice thing about this post board is it is designed for students. So all of the other websites that I'm going to mention, it is available to the public. So it might not be as student-focused the types of housing, but the McMaster off-campus housing is designed for students. So as a McMaster student, you have to log in to have access to it. And then as a landlord, they would only be posting properties that they're looking to get students. So most of these would be within general proximity of McMaster or landlords that are looking to rent out to students. And so you can find this by going to the website of housing.mcmaster.ca. And when you get there, you'll kind of navigate your way to the post board, and there's different ways that you can filter by property type. So if you're looking for an apartment, rent price, number of bedrooms that you're looking for, number of bathrooms, that kind of thing, you can filter through. And then when you click on the ad, it would give you some pictures to do a little bit of a walkthrough of the property, tell you how much it would be and how to contact the landlord. Other options that are quite popular with students is through Facebook. So on Facebook, there is a couple of things. There are some McMaster student-run housing boards. So they're not affiliated with McMaster. They are public spaces, but some students have created some private McMaster student housing Facebook groups that you could search for to join. So that this would be sort of an example of what it would look like. So on this group, people will post, there's 4 of us living in a 5-bedroom house. We're looking for someone to come in and take over that final bedroom. Or often what happens is people might post like yourself. You say, hey, I'm a student arriving in January. I'm looking for a place to live. Does anybody have a 1-bedroom apartment that I could find? So that's one way to use Facebook. The other would be to use Facebook Marketplace. And so on Facebook Marketplace, you can navigate your way to property rentals, search for Hamilton, and then you would be able to see the different types of properties that are available. Do keep in mind, though, that Facebook is open to anybody. So the places that you're searching for, it might not be specifically for students. They might be further away from campus. And then there are some other off-campus housing websites. Probably the most common one is a website called Kijiji. So KIJIJI.ca. It's actually a really great website if you are even looking to buy like a desk or a bed or any used furniture. People use that to sell all kinds of items, but they do have a place for sort of real estate and rental. So you could go to Kijiji, look for Hamilton. Again, this is going to be open to anybody, so it might not necessarily be student or campus specific. Some other websites that you might be interested in are rentals.com or rentseeker.ca. Again, not student specific, but these are other options that you can look for. So depending on how your search goes and what your comfort level is, some students want to try to get everything arranged prior to your arrival, which is okay. That there is a little bit of risk, if you're signing a lease of a place that you haven't seen before, and I'll talk a little bit more about some of those issues later. But if you are planning to, come to Hamilton, maybe mid-December, start your search like while you are here, you might be looking for some temporary housing upon your arrival. And so, in Hamilton, there's Airbnbs, hotels. There is one kind of hostel guest house that you could stay at. So if you go to the Tourism Hamilton website, they have a list of all the accommodations that are available. I would recommend, if you're planning to do this and stay for a week or two in a temporary housing accommodation, maybe try to find something that has some cooking facilities. Eating out and doing takeout in Canada can be very, very expensive. So, if you can find something that has like a little stovetop or a microwave or something, a little fridge, just so you can buy some general items to kind of keep the overall cost down. So you're not paying more like for a hotel and then having to pay for 3 meals a day eating out, because that can really become very, very expensive over time. So as I mentioned, that there are some concerns when it comes to searching for a house, especially if you're doing it not within Canada and not being able to actually physically go and see it. So if you're on any of these websites and that the online presentation is really poor, there's not a lot of information, maybe you're contacting the landlord and they're not giving you a lot of details, if you're asking questions and they just won't be open with you about it, that could be, a warning sign that maybe this post isn't, it's not a safe place to live, or maybe it's a scam type of post. On the flip side, things that are almost too good to be true, you want to be wary of that too. If it's a place that looks brand new, renovated, close to campus, $500 a month for a 1-bedroom apartment, and saying, I can't hold it for you anymore. You have to sign, you have to commit today, send me a deposit of $2,000 and I'll hold that space for you, is probably too good to be true as well. So not just the poor online presentation, but sometimes if things are too good, it might not be a real post. Also be very wary. I mentioned before that the practice of asking for significant deposits is not something that is common in Canada. Maybe asking for last month rent as a deposit may be common, but if people are asking for like thousands and thousands of dollars up front, or asking for you to pay in cash or sort of some questionable payment methods, that again could be a warning sign that it is not a legitimate post. And just use your intuition. If you're communicating with a person and you just have some doubt, you don't want to put yourself in a position where you're either signing up for a place that's going to be an unsafe place to live, or you're giving your personal information or financial information to somebody where it's not a legitimate place. And so again, I'm not trying to tell this to you to scare you, but this is the reality that some of these public postings, anybody can make a post, and sadly some people are trying to get money from people without actually providing a house. So again, just be very, very mindful while you're going through this. One thing that you could do if you found a place and that the pictures look okay, you could always ask and say, is it possible that we can have a Zoom call or like a WhatsApp phone call and just do a video walkthrough of the property, just to make sure that the pictures that they're showing weren't taken 15 years ago and then the property is now run down and damaged, and just to kind of verify that the property that they have posted, they have access to and they are able to show you. So once you are ready to move in, you have found a place that you're happy with, there are some sort of general tips that I would suggest that you follow. Try to meet your landlord in person and receive the keys with them, and then do a walkthrough of the property with your landlord. Sometimes the landlord might say, yeah, I'll just leave it in a box or something, and you just go in, and you could do that. But the nice thing about going through the property with your landlord is that you'll be able to take note of any existing damage that you find in the property. So if there's, I don't know, like a little hole in the wall, or maybe the kitchen counter has some stains, or a tile is broken or something like that, you can sort of document that with your landlord as you move in to make sure that when you move out, the landlord isn't blaming you for causing that damage. Other things that you want to do is talk to your landlord about how do you dispose of garbage and recycling. Do you as the tenant have any responsibilities? Do you have to shovel the snow? Do you have to cut the grass? That stuff should be covered in the lease, but it is good to have that conversation with your landlord as you're moving in. Also understand how the appliances work. Is it a gas stove? Is it an electric stove? If the way that we cook in Canada is different than the way you cook back home, just make sure that you're doing your sort of due diligence and making sure it is safe. Also note that even if it is a furnished place, most places might provide you the bed, but you might have to bring your own sheets, towels, and that kind of stuff. Just sort of general safety tips. We do always recommend that you lock your doors and windows. Obviously, if it's a nice day and you want your window open, that's okay. But if you go out, make sure your windows are locked, and always keep your doors locked. You never want to let anybody into the house that you do not know. If somebody is there saying they're there to do repairs or they're there to inspect something, that needs to be arranged ahead of time with your landlord. So again, you just don't want to let anybody in that you don't know or you weren't anticipating to come. Check to make sure that your house has working smoke alarms and carbon monoxide detectors. This is something, again, when you meet with your landlord, that's something you should have that discussion with. Most smoke alarms will have like a little test button that your landlord could just push as verification that they are still working. As a student, you might have a phone charger, a laptop, maybe you have a TV, maybe you have a little fridge or a microwave. Just make sure you are not overloading electrical outlets or extension cords. If you're cooking, don't leave your house. Make sure your house is going to be safe. And then the last thing just to be aware of, some apartments or some houses, they may have bed bugs, and they may have mice, they may have other little pests and things. So again, as a tenant, you have rights to living in a safe, clean environment. And so if there are, hopefully this doesn't happen, but if there are bed bugs, if there are mice, anything like that, it is the landlord's responsibility to keep your property safe, okay, safe and clean. And so if you do encounter anything like that, or anything that's broken, a broken pipe, broken toilet, water's not working properly, no hot water, anything like that, that is the landlord's responsibility. And you would need to connect with your landlord right away, and they would be responsible to ensure that that stuff is fixed and taken care of. And so obviously, we're living in time with COVID, it's flu season now in Canada. And so just a general reminder, if you're living with other people, just make sure that you're living cleanly, proper hand washing. If anybody does get sick with COVID, monitor symptoms, quarantine if you need to. And generally, McMaster's been very, I think, proactive in saying, if you are not feeling well, do not come to campus, right? Connect with your professor, tell your classmates, whatever it is, the expectation that if you are not feeling well, you should be staying home. This is a slide that I hope you never ever have to use, but I do just want to share it with you just so you know that there is support available to you. So if you ever have a dispute with a landlord or issues with your roommates, or any other kind of concerns, in the community, there is the Hamilton Legal Clinic, which offers free legal advice, not just on housing, on anything. But really, I want to emphasize that, we are here to support you with any questions or concerns that you have. So it could be about housing, it could be about I can't find any of the food that I know how to cook with because everything in the grocery stores I'm not familiar with. It could be anything big or small. Please reach out to us. Our job is to help you and to ensure that your time at McMaster and your transition to McMaster goes smoothly. So if you do have any questions, please feel free to, again, you know me now, you can connect with myself, or you can connect with you, Faye, or you can always email us at iss@mcmaster.ca. So in terms of your next steps, what you'd want to do is kind of finalize your budget, figure out, can I afford to live by myself? What kind of housing can I afford? Identify what those needs are for you. Who do I want to live with? Am I a clean person? Do I drink? Do I smoke? All of that sort of thing. Then you're going to start your search, and again, do it with due diligence. We want to make sure that you're doing this safe. If you encounter things that you're not too sure about, or if you want to, even if you encounter something and you're like, this is a neighborhood it's not the neighborhood Andrew talked about. Where is this in the city? Can I learn more about that neighborhood? You can always email us and we can kind of give you a bit of a local perspective about what that neighborhood would be like. Then you finalize your housing choice, and then you'd be moving in and getting settled. So that kind of concludes the formal part of the presentation. I know this was a ton of information for you to digest. We are, you, Faye, and I are available to answer any questions that you might have. And again, you can use the Q&A